Welcome to the Sacred Gates Ascension podcast. My name is Illura. There are many ways to enter into your practice, no matter what it is that you're practicing. If you're working with your own energy and you're cultivating, transmuting, transforming, nourishing energy, there's many ways to enter into the practice. And from what I have experienced on my own path, the best way to enter into it is completely focused and dedicated to listening, observing, feeling. For what I have found is that the best way to show reverence to the path and the art and the practices, techniques, modalities, information, concepts, wherever you're at, the best way to show reverence for all of that which you are connecting to is to observe, to enter in as an observer through feeling, through listening. And when we really take this on, allowing our minds to wander is not a good option. We want to stay fully in the moment, absolutely as much as possible. Of course, the mind will wander, but the less excuses you give for that to happen, and the more strict you are and disciplined you are on yourself and in not allowing that to happen, you'll find that the quality and depth of your training increases a lot. It also helps to develop a less messy practice, and that allows it to become more accurate. And when we are entering into our training and we are fully listening and observing and feeling, through feeling is so important, then our experience of the art, the experience of our energy, of our body, of our mind is just hugely more informative, a lot more interactive, and it really becomes a path, a real path that you are on. Because if you just simply are not feeling and instead you are thinking, so that your mind, your greatest tool, right, is not really in your whole body. A lot of people find that their mind is stuck up in their head. Then you're going to find that it's much more restricted, because you literally are restricting the substance of your consciousness, which, as you know, is multidimensional. But if you are just feeling like it's just stuck up from the neck up, and I don't mean in an expanded way, but literally just stuck in your head, in your skull, then you're going to experience the art in such a cut-off way. There is just so much that you're not going to be able to feel. There's so much less feedback. You experience so much less of the path, and thus so much less of yourself. And instead what you get stuck in are your expectations, is your mind, which often is linked to the personality and ego. When it's restricted, it just has less of itself to explore and release into. You start to think, and you are more in the chatter, very kind of thinking, and you then kind of the mind from that perspective and that limitation tends to project a lot of what you've already experienced or learned or know of from perhaps books you've read, or emails or articles or experiences you've had before, or a talk you went to, or this or that or the other. And so it's very difficult to experience the wisdom of your higher self and your higher selves when you are just kind of coming from these concepts and constructs. Some of them are like social, some of them are personal, family constructs, spiritual constructs, and so that ends up being your experience. And you experience your energy body and your system and your art from the imagination, but not the imagination used in a skillful way, and instead the imagination just kind of out there, just imagining this, that, and the other, and what you'd like to experience, but there's no actual canvas that the imagination is being projected onto or laid onto. So for example, imagine that you have a pot of paint and a paintbrush, and you're trying to paint in the air. So there's not really going to be much feedback or much much positive result that you can really connect with and feel and get feedback when you paint in the air. But when you paint on a canvas, then you get a lot more out of the paint. And so in this case, when it comes to healing energy work, your body is that canvas. And so you need to undeniably feel what is there through your imagination. So when I say in a video I did on the energy ball, when you're pushing your hands together, imagine that you're compressing down onto a rubber ball, and as you pull apart, imagine there are rubber bands being pulled apart. Now imagine that. Now I'm not just saying like imagine that like painting in the air, painting in the sky. I'm saying imagine that right here, right now. And what happens is that you end up feeling it. And what's important is the feeling aspect of the imagination. For if you're not really feeling in your physical body in an undeniable way, then you just kind of get stuck in the imaginary, which is often quite just linked in that kind of level of the mind, like the intellect, where you're just imagining this, imagining that, but you're not really feeling it truly in your own body. You're not actually really experiencing it. So the imagination in regards to like the canvas being the body actually becomes a tool for feeling and developing real undeniable ability. But the imagination used just painting it in the air and imagining imaginings, but not actually connecting it with feeling in the physical body, the vehicle here, then that takes you on a very, very, very different path, which I personally was on for quite some time. I did have real physical, spiritual sensations, but a lot of it I realized in retrospect was my imagination and just imagining. And when I realized that, I realized also simultaneously that I didn't really know where I was at in my energy development. I didn't really feel like I knew what was going on. And so if you want to experience your energy and to really get into a path, you really need to enter in with reverence, and that is through the qualities of observing, feeling, listening. Just like you would if you walked into a very sacred ritual. You wouldn't just like barge in and kind of tell everybody what to do and your experience and how that's not being done properly. You walk in quietly, you sit and you observe. And when you do that, whether it's with pranic energy, Reiki, with your yoga practice, with your chi, and also with the elements, for example, they just, whatever it is, the consciousness, the sentience of that art just opens up to you. It gives you so much, and you realize, wow, there is so much for me to feel here. And feeling is something that you can get better at, or you can actually start to kind of diminish and lose. I know there's been a number of years ago when before I really started to get really into Qigong, I realized that I was not really being able to feel as much, and it kind of freaked me out. And the more you feel, the more you go into this and observe and feel what is already there and explore it and allow your high self to guide you, or the sentience of the practice, or simply just your ability to observe and move through change and difference and not get stuck with your expectations and all these limitations the ego and the personality self put on top of these experiences. They limit the spiritual sometimes. Then you're going to find that if you're able to move through and feel and do all of that, it's just going to open itself up to you more and more and more. And that's why these paths are such long paths. That's why these paths are about cultivation. That's why they're called a gung. It's a spiritual path. And, it's very much about sitting back, being active, but sitting back and feeling, because, how many times have you experienced your practice and you just kind of are stuck up in your head and you just kind of cut off from the feeling? It's quite a horrible feeling, isn't it? And so you want to learn how to use your body and your mind so that you can really enter into the stillness and feel. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye-bye.